welcome to episode number 1 of Doing It for Retention. Well, I had to make this one a special one and get a superb guest on board. They weren't available, so I brought... Jokes aside, James Lawson, everybody, an absolute CS veteran. Not because he's been in it since the early 2000s, but someone that I've known for, a really good amount of time now, actually. I think I met you back... I mean, we were chatting back and forth on LinkedIn way back when. I think we were prospecting you, actually. But then I had the pleasure of meeting you at the Plan Hat event where they managed to cram about 50,000 people into a 4-person room. It felt like it was a good event, though. Just to mention. But welcome, my first.
Thank you. Oh, it's an honour. It's an honour to be your first. It doesn't sound right, does it?
It doesn't, no. We'll leave it in.
Do something in the edit.
Good stuff. No, great to have you here, buddy. And it's mad, actually. Because I look back on your work history, and you worked in recruitment like many, many years ago as well. So I just want to say, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I did. It was so painful. I don't know how you do it. Yeah,
I don't know how I do it either. But, for 16 years old, I look fantastic. But so the kind of theme of Doing It for Retention is all things customer success, but it's the GTM side that's really, really important. It's that unified approach to, winning, retaining and growing business for SaaS organizations. And I think there's so many different topics that sit within that. So I want to bring people from lots of different spaces that can, certainly provide perspective. We're really fortunate as recruiters that we get to speak to so many different people. So, we're not here telling businesses how to operate, but we can give them perspective. And that's why I love chatting to people like yourself. And there's a lot of hot topics at the moment around AI, sales, customer success, the kind of ongoing battle between the two. If ever I post anything out on LinkedIn, it tends to get tons of likes when I mention sales and CS. So, I'd love to dive into some of that. But I've decided with every podcast to send a guest something that, based on knowing them, I think will, be a kind of nice way to kick things off. And everyone likes a bit of an unboxing. So I've done the same, actually. I've bought myself the same thing. But you said to me a couple of weeks back, you're kind of on this health kick at the moment, calorie deficit, high protein. All that. And I'm really passionate about the gym, and I'm also passionate about the world, sustainability, and great protein sources. So check it out. I thought you'd really appreciate it.
Right. I'm a bit scared. Let's just hope this is the thing from you. I'm not...
You're like, I did order that, but...
Oh, wow.
Yeah?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
okay.
There's, just to give a bit of insight, so there's mealworms, crickets and locusts. I read the back earlier, and basically you can enjoy them either dry or actually plump. You can just add some hot water and let them soften for a bit. So.
Oh, like a pot noodle.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're not being flavoured, so they're not even salted.
Right, let's go in. What are you going to go for first?
I think we need to open and smell straight away and just see if they've got that earthy kind of... And I'm really sorry if there's anyone that's upset by the death of insects. We did not kill them.
Vegan.
Yeah.
Right, it doesn't smell good, I won't lie.
Oh my God.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, they're no, I don't actually think I can eat one of these.
Oh,
they're really big.
I'll do it for the content, but man, they look so real.
Oh, mate,
I mean, they are real, but
look, I feel bad. Look,
look
it's got wings.
Face.
It's got wings.
Face. Well, I'll do the locust.
How do I get this to display? It's got wings. Are you going for a locust?
I'm going to go for a locust.
Oh.
All right.
Oh, the wings. Do you eat the wings as well, do you think? Because they're soft.
I think you just pop the whole thing in. They don't come with a jus. All right, okay. I'll go again. Are you going in? Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
I don't like the wings.
Oh, God. Oh, 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 God, it's so traumatic.
Oh, God.
I have to drink. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Locust. Oh, oh, God, I've got to probably watch Bugs Life later to make up for this. Oh, that's horrendous. I wonder what a mealworm's like, though. Go for one of them. The mealworms are probably at the bottom where they
That's a mealworm, I think. I don't think the mealworms would be too bad, actually. They're quite small, aren't they?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I've got a mealworm.
Oh, God. Look, it's when you get, like, a leg. Just... I can't get...
Right, I'm going in with a mealworm.
Okay, I kind of don't want to pour these out on my desk. I think that's meal. Is that mealworm?
Some kind of masochist. It's quite little, yeah. Okay.
That looks different to mine. That's it. I can do that.
That is all right.
I could do that.
That was okay. Yeah, that was okay. That tastes like a little bit like the end of a pork scratching.
So per bag. So imagine eating the whole bag. There's only 149 calories, but nearly 20 grams of protein. So if you're bulking up, and you can stomach it, because there's quite a lot in there, to be honest.
There's a lot.
If you can stomach eating all of that, then anyway.
Yeah, or just go to the park and leave your mouth open and wander around.
Thanks for doing that. That was fantastic.
That was good fun. Cheers to that.
That's basically meant I'm never going to get... I'm sorry, I can feel the wing. Yeah, that was actually part of the wing.
I feel like Jeff Goldblum.
Okay. That's definitely going to reduce the short list of guests that I've got lined up to speak to. So that's a good thing. That worked.
Get that one over with.
Let's jump into it. There's a few bits to cover here. I think what we should do is every time we say the word retention, we should have to eat a bug.
Yeah.
No. All right. So, big topic at the moment is obviously AI in CS, and it's kind of it feels like it's overdone, but maybe because from what I'm seeing is there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of like execution. Like, this is what we've done and this is what's worked really well. There's a lot of talk. So I'm kind of interested just to dive into it with you and kind of what you're seeing and what your thoughts are. And again, it might just be a lot of talk and a lack of execution, but I doubt that. And I guess the first thing, probably more controversially, what's your kind of, I guess what do you think about AI in customer success right now?
I think it's I think it's spoken about a lot because everybody knows it's coming.
Yeah.
I think from a business perspective, the observations I'm making is just very simply that it's more about its application, but what are the really big use cases for it, regardless of how it's done. So if it's done with AI, then fantastic. But the expectation of the leaps in use cases is now a lot higher because of the prowess of AI. So I think that's where everybody's kind of saying, well, I don't really know what is happening with AI. And that is purely because we haven't heard anything yet that is an almost unbelievable use case. Like, for example, I can get you to avoid churn for the next 3 years by mitigating economic uncertainty by using AI. You don't even need to say AI. They'd be like, wow, how on earth are you doing that? Regardless of the technology. So I think that's what I'm observing. But my my views on it personally are from just everyday application of it. So which is more around where it's used and introspectively, while everyone is looking at AI, nobody is actually looking at personas and people, which I find really interesting. And that's because when it comes down to it, the technology itself is fine, but ultimately, as human beings, part of I spoke about this before, like part of our build as a human is human behavior is known as SCARF. So stands for SCARF, another acronym, but status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And it's that relatedness part which is about trust, which is going to impact AI and going to impact everybody in CS and in business in general.
Yeah.
And to give a really simple example, I did a survey not too long ago to about 100 students at a university. Don't ask why I was there. I wasn't just hanging around the unit, handing out pamphlets it wasn't like American Pie. But basically, I was looking at it and thinking, well, would you trust an AI to do your essays? Yes. Would you trust AI to do, brush your teeth? Yes. Would you trust it to do brain surgery? No. And what's interesting about that is anything that's in business that is high risk, there isn't quite yet that trust in the technology to then go and do it. So a lot of the applications of it seem to be back office at the moment, but the use cases are just not that outstanding enough, really, to be portrayed on the front line or on LinkedIn. And I think that's one of the things that I find really interesting. And I spoke to you the other day about this. I said, if you remember, I said I watched Good Will Hunting the other night, which is like a show about it's a movie about a guy who's
a
young lad. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Robin Williams, Matt Damon,
yeah, Ben Affleck. It's Matt Damon is like this extraordinarily clever guy. He's got photographic memory, and basically there's a scene in it where Robin Williams says to him, and Robin Williams is his therapist, and he says to him,
"You're just a kid. You don't have the faintest idea what you're talking about."
Why, thank you.
It's all right. So if I asked you about art, you'd probably give me the skinny on every art book ever written. I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel.
You're just a kid. He said, "You're really smart, but you're just a kid. Like you can recite all of this literature. You've got photographic memory. You can read any book and remember everything, but you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel."
Yeah.
And that really, I watched that scene and I was like, that's exactly where we are, because you can't replace experience or the feeling of trust. And I feel like that's where we've been really heavily distracted by AI and not looked at ourselves introspectively and our personas and the use cases, basically.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And I've tried to regurgitate that to someone the other day and it just did not come out the right way. Like, it's a great analogy, but you'll have to piece it together, go and watch the film. I mean, when you say to someone, have you seen it? And they say no, it kind of ruins the analogy anyway, because you just don't have the emotional conviction of the delivery of it. We'll kind of jump between AI and it all kind of interlinks. But if you look at customer success professionals today, what would you say is lacking? Because you interact with lots of them, right?
Yeah. Mainly I'd say something I call knowledge commerce. So basically what I'm talking about there is I'd want to, as a customer and someone that hires a CSM, to almost think that if I didn't hire this person, I would pay them for what they know.
Yeah.
And that's what I would consider to be knowledge commerce. And whether that be best practices, industry, and experience of applying what they've done before to generate value. And then the second thing, which I don't see a lot of, which is such a shame, because I feel like soft skills are just dropped these days, but is just being able to deliver or articulate value with impact. I had an incredible coach on this, a guy called Maurice Hellemans, who looking up, he's on LinkedIn, but I had an incredible coach back in the day, a long time ago, in my Oracle days. And basically he taught this, and for everybody to have it, it just means that on every engagement with any persona, whether it be internal or external, you're able to just articulate value for impact. Every conversation, every sentence is of high value, and people, you can command a respect and a level of engagement with that. And I just don't see a lot of that. And I don't know. I'll be interested to find out when you look at CSMs. Is it really clear to you when you do that in your job?
For what we look for and for what our clients want, it's becoming a lot clearer. So when clients ask us to find talent now, it's not just we want a CSM with 3 years of experience that maybe has some exposure to this type of technology, this deal size. What they're actually thinking about now is we're hiring for our business and our culture and our product, but actually we're almost hiring a CSM for our customer. So persona experience is becoming really important. So when we're thinking about, okay, we need to hire someone in educational technology, for example, if they've been a teacher in the past and they've used software programs similar to what our client sells and what they would use, then it's a massive game changer, because it almost goes back to the Goodwill Hunting thing. Like these individuals, they're not just theorizing what the software does and how it might impact, they can feel the physical impact because they've been the recipient of the pain point. So that's probably where I'm seeing significant impact. And controversially, I think that's where getting into CS is becoming more challenging, because this kind of vanilla CS role now doesn't really exist.
It's kind of like a facilitator, wasn't it, at some point?
And that's the, this is the what might get you cancelled statement that people don't want to hear, but it's like, well, I don't think there's going to be much room for junior CSM roles in most organisations, because that's the part that technology is going to start taking away, and it's going to free up more experienced individuals. But your entry into CS is more likely going to be a different looking role. It might be that you have that persona, that buyer experience, and then you're going in a customer solutions architect type position, because you're helping build the customizable platform requirements for what you have looked at directly, what you felt the pain points, etc. So I think the landscape's just changing massively. And that's how it all kind of intertwines with AI as well. And it's an interesting time.
I think as well, like, it's interesting you say about like them understanding the impact. So one of the things that always strikes me about like the ecosystem that we have, especially on LinkedIn with CS, is we just always constantly echo this thing about outcomes. You won't get a statement without it saying about customer outcomes and customers they serve and all of these things. And I love all the theory, and unfortunately, there's not enough wide data for it not to be a theory or a thesis or a belief. And that's totally fine. And I think that's good and healthy to have that. However, what I would say is that the actual reality on the ground, and I know I'm going to get a lot of CSMs fist bump the air when I say this. Somehow it's such an American thing to say. They don't do that. They won't be doing that. But I know that a lot of CSMs will go, you're totally right, is that customers don't know what outcomes they want. And that's a hard truth that is very hard to get across. They don't know what they want. And so when they hire a CSM that has that knowledge commerce or knows the impact, there are a lot of cases that I see where CSM actually has a really heavily influences what the outcome should be for the customer. Almost like they're a consultancy, which I think is amazing. And actually, I think that's what we should be looking for, is let's not let the customer decide what their outcome is. Let's tell them what it should be. And I see that change in C happening a lot. And that's not based on my little bubble of Axiom. That's just based on like the TSIA reports, everything where you get data from. If you go look, you'll sort of see that actually there's not a lot about outcomes in there. And that's because baby steps underneath it. It's the best practice is what now? What is best practice now? I think that's where it can be driven by experts.
That's really interesting, because even from a recruitment perspective, I mentioned this at the beginning of the chat, that we get a lot of perspective from different individuals, but we're not the guys and girls executing customer success in businesses. But if you think about the notion you just discussed, as a recruiter, going in and actually being able to advise based on fact. So this is what a competitor's doing successfully. This is what the data's showing us, and here's departments that are spinning up which are adding X value. We are in essence advising our customers what to hire for. And when I think about the conversations we have, we are actually shaping their department successfully. But it's, as a recruiter, you always try and serve the need of the customer, but it's not always what the customer needs.
Exactly, right? Yeah. It's not always the reality of the actual job as well.
Yeah, no, exactly that. And obviously there's lots of unicorn roles that have spun up in certainly the last year. Requirements are getting kind of tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
And interesting, I think that is a product again of CS having this phase of ultra growth, lots of hiring, a lot of people not really knowing what they want, and subsequently lots of redundancies took place. People stopped spending money, and the pressure now from the board is like, yeah, you can hire CS again, but like, what are we going to get for it this time, because it didn't work last time? And I think there's a lot more spotlight on, we need to increase all of these parts. There's no compromise now. You need to go and find us that. And that's why it's more challenging for recruiters, right? We have very niche requirements, but challenging, but almost in essence slightly easier sometimes, because the narrower net is very centered and kind of pointed at what we need to search for. So there's less room there's less margin for error. So James, in your opinion, how do you see the role of CS evolving in the next 12, 18 months?
So I think this depends quite heavily on where SaaS products go, if we're talking specifically about SaaS. So all I ever hear certainly from product side, is simplicity is just beating innovation every time. So if that is true, and the 3 growth levers in SaaS are going to be pulled, one of them being monetized services, migrating commercials, and so on. If those levers are pulled in terms of, CSMs becoming more revenue aligned, which they absolutely have to be, I can see it certainly turning a corner, but very gradually and over time, into a role that is far more like a consultancy role.
Yeah.
And in fact, embedded in firms already, especially in the US, they have kind of consultant roles, whether it be solution consultant or, a specific industry consultant. And if you look at the bare bones of their role, they do literally exactly what is on the tin of a CSM.
Yeah.
And I think that knowledge will become more valuable as time goes on. So I think the CSM is definitely going to become more consultative. And the new oil for a CSM is a combination of negative and positive experiences that they've had. So if they've had any great losses of clients or lessons they've learned and great wins, bringing them to the table is super important. And in fact, the best CSM I know right now, I say he's the best CSM I know just purely because of the amount of trauma he's gone through with customers, but the amount of wins he's had as well. And he is very open about putting both of those things side by side when he approaches any company. Because what he's not afraid to do is say, I actually don't know how to do that, and I don't know that, but I can find out.
Right.
But obviously I haven't got the experience and so on. But he's so good at articulating the value of that activity that people trust his guidance.
Yeah. And
they can also see like where he's won and where he's lost. Where I don't trust the future of CS is this constant sort of weighing in on, I've turned NRR into this, I've elevated this situation and so on. And because there's so many variables that contribute to that. So for them to be part of it is great, but there's too many variables. Where I think would be a massive thing for CS to invest in, if you're a CSM or a CS leader, is to really start to double down on some advice that I was given right at the very start of my whole career, which was, if you want to win in SaaS, the equation is NNH: network, numbers, and be the hero.
Nice.
And then the network and numbers bit was always a little bit obvious to me, but I sort of get that the intensity of that is quite, if the more you intensely do those things and focus on numbers. The be the hero bit is the bit I've always struggled with. And what I discovered way too late for my own career, but for others, there's CSMs have been promoted everywhere because of this fact, is where CSMs take a step forward and involve themselves in cross collaboration in the company and become almost like self-made leaders, gluing bits of the organization together to get success or to save a customer or to find opportunities. Now, in some companies, when the product is more simple, there are more opportunities than when there are companies that are complex, which does freak out PE and investment firms and many CEOs, because they are like, well, we built this product really complex, so we have the autonomy for new opportunities. When in fact, the evidence is actually the other way around. So the more you can sausage factory it, the better. The complexity actually lends itself against the will of a CSM. Which is it's contra to what I think many believe, but that is evidently what's happening. So I can see if product gets simpler, CSMs will definitely be more consultative. If they don't, I see this world where they're almost TAM-like in their energy. And I do totally support any CSM out there, especially if you're listening to this, is that you have a choice. Like, it's not up to you. You are fully in control. It's not your boss, it's not the company, it's not the product or the CEO. You are fully in control of your career, right? And you've seen it, Luke, all the time. You are fully in control. You can go anywhere, but just go somewhere where you know you can add value. Don't stay somewhere where you can't.
That's awesome. And a lot of people hear the commercial bit and they'll wince a little bit. I get that a lot with CS professionals. The second you mention commercial, they think sales, and it's just we're not salespeople. We're not going to pressure our clients into buying anything. So can you articulate what you mean by being more commercial in CS?
Yeah, so I'd say it's understanding. First of all, I'd say understanding the internal financials of the company. So I would say step one, understand how your own firm works commercially. What are their targets? How do they run? What's the total cost of ownership and department? Understand as much as you possibly can about what the value of your time and other people's time, because then you will navigate that with a knowledge of what is the cost of my decisions, and if someone else is doing something, what is the cost of their decisions? And I think that's a good way of being commercial. The second thing is CSMs that haven't got negotiation skills, if they do, and they have, fantastic. I'm not against anything like that. But what I would say is get closer to the commercial side, get closer to sales, because there is a blanket audience of, I would say a majority of CSMs have got a bit of a beef about sales. And if we had a gun to our heads, we'd say, I know why. It's because we think we can do a better job. And also, we don't want to get unicorns thrown over the fence for us to then look after. So it's like a hit and run. And if we just reframe that, I think you have to let them, because you have to let sales do that. And then you have to make a conscious choice yourself. Like I say, you are in control as to how we navigate that, right? And that's why the only way to navigate it is to get closer to sales. The wrong way to do it is to bitch and moan about them and run away and say they're useless at their jobs. So there is definitely something in that, and I'd say it's been going on for decades.
Well, I liken it to sales and marketing divide, and I think to actually rewind a couple of clicks, firstly, like, all super valid, and there are some additional bits to add to that, and I highly recommend, if you've not seen it before, anyone listening, there's a chap called Rab Dalawal who's an investor, and he actually created a really interesting kind of article about sales and customer success and cross collaboration and how you align yourself. I've posted about it before, but I'll put a link to that because it's really, really interesting, and it just further supports what you've said. But back to the sales and marketing thing, I was speaking about earlier. Basically, sales and marketing were divided many years ago, and actually in some businesses they probably still are. Who owns what leads, a sales qualified lead, marketing qualified lead. But at a point, marketing was considered the colouring in department, and it was all creative, and it was all very like sentiment and feel good, and it wasn't based on facts, figures and numbers. And now marketing is a fundamental piece of any organisation, certainly any SaaS business, at driving through marketing qualified leads. So if we go to an event, we're going because we want to generate X number of leads. It's cost us this much. So the CAC, the customer acquisition cost, when you're factoring all of this, is the following. We know PPC channels look like this. When we run SEO, it looks like this. And I think when we talk about commercial CS, like, it's not the same as the marketing divide, but it's similar in the sense that a lot of CS teams, and not most of them, but a lot, are still very customer centric, and it's always, well, if we do the right stuff by the customer, then, and we track NPS and we do all this stuff, then the good stuff will happen. But a lot of that is sentiment, whereas in the middle there needs to be some really tangible stats behind it, and it's understanding business stats, not just customers as well, and then kind of combining the two. And I think from everything I've read, seen, every individual I've spoken to that have done incredibly well in CS, they seem to have the business metrics nailed down. It's what's in it for us and what's in it for the customer, and then how do we kind of create this almost like multilingual approach. We'll speak your language, customer, but we speak the business's language as well. And then I think that's where they become the hero, because they can say to the board, this is what the department's generating, and they can say to customers, this is how we're enabling you to be more successful by using our platform, and this is what it's generating. And I think that's the commercial bit I think that's missing a lot of the time. It's not
I agree.
It's not picking up the phone and pitching to your customers. But again, if you've got capability and you're the closest thing to your customer, having that conversation and not helicoptering in a salesperson, in certain organisations that would work really well. If it's an ultra complex, multi-threaded deal, okay, maybe it's different. But I don't think there's like a blanket CS is this for one company anyway. It's not a one size fits all. So again, it kind of complicates the argument even more. But you should still be commercial, in my opinion. And that's what I base that on what companies are looking for now, and what investors are looking for. What boards are talking about. So
and I hear quite a lot. Like I remember when I went to this event and I did. I had a bit too much to drink in the first hour.
So when I met you,
it might have been. And I think what happened was someone I was with said to me, go up to every a leader in here and ask them, what do they think CS is? And I went up to, it wasn't that many, but I'd say maybe 5 or 6 leaders. And I went and asked them, and their answer was always the same. They just said, it's whatever I want it to be. Which I find interesting, because obviously I was intoxicated, but I was also like, Are you
sure that's what they said?
They might have not. Maybe it was a dream. It might have been a bad dream. But they one of them did point out that, and I found it was just so interesting talking to this guy who was one of the leaders. Actually, he was one of the leaders at Salesforce, and he had said, well, the thing is that it is whatever I want it to be, but the point is that I just want I want 2 things. I want the product to work, and I want an expert. I don't need anything else.
Right.
So if I have someone come along who knows about our customers and our and the product and how to use it, then great. But he made a point which I've carried with me ever since he made it, which was there are the top 5 customers that have got the best customer acquisition cost to long-term value, or rate of customer acquisition. It's in the TSIA report. You can go and look at it. And if you look at those customers, what I find super interesting is that they all, their approach to CS is pretty much standard, right?
Yeah.
But one layer that I saw in the top 10, I'd say, -1, was that actually CSMs didn't just know the company's commercials, like you were saying, marketing, sales, and so on, and the cost of decisions. but they also looked at not just their customers, but their customers' customers.
Oh, really? Oh,
okay. So, which makes a lot of sense. So basically what they're saying is, if we give a customer a product, actually what they're aiming to do is serve their customer. So if a customer is asking for something and the outcome is the same for their customer, then should they be asking it? And what's the cost of that decision?
Yeah.
And suddenly you start to see why these software companies are the leaders, because they're just thinking on multiple levels about simplifying what they understand and the value of each pattern handover. And I think that's testament to where it will go if that trend continues.
So flipping back to the commercial and CS side and incorporating AI, do you think AI is going to enhance the relationship between sales and CS, or do you think it's going to create a bigger gap?
I think it's going to create a bigger gap, which I think most people will disagree with me on, but I'm only basing it on the axiom's a new word I recently learned. I'm basing it on, let's just call it an observation of the fact that if there is an expert in someone using AI versus someone that's not, it will eventually cause tension. And that is because, again, it's about trust and knowledge around the data, not just the data that's presented. Whereas I think what will help is if there is AI is used for mutual beneficial reasons. So there's plenty of tooling out there which can be used both by CS and account management and sales collectively. So whether that means it's gathering insights that feed sales when there are opportunities that then notify the CSM, all of these sort of little mini use cases. So I feel like a salesperson is just going to want a CSM to say, here's an opportunity. They're not going to care about whether it's come from AI or not. But if you did say, the AI found this opportunity, sales would still bite your arm off and say, I want the opportunity. But there's an element of, again, going back to that trust and credibility side. Like, okay, but what is it based on? You know? Yeah. And that seems to render the whole exercise pointless. Like if you have to check behind the curtain how the theatre production is working, then it's not, what's the point in seeing the play, you know? So that's where I think it will create a divide. I hope that the platforms that are available, all of the big major players that have CRM platforms and CSPs, I hope that their functionality starts to glue CS and sales together by means of having mutual data sets or single data sets with real obsession on the ICP and best fit, good fit, and having something that can be collectively used by both parties. I think technology tooling will encourage it. I just think right now, looking at Gen Zs, who you must see all the time, I still feel like there's a wave of Gen Zs coming through in which are misaligned with the slightly older audience.
Yeah. Do you know
I can sort that coming.
No, it's a really good point. I think one of the reasons there's that misalignment is the lack of in-office time. So remote working's become, a huge. It's become an expectation for even individuals that don't really have any tangible work experience. It's just an inbuilt expectation now, and the individuals that are working remotely successfully in most instances are those that have been in offices. They have been surrounded by people. They have heard conversations. They've had those uncomfortable meetings. They've figured stuff out together quickly. And I know technology is fantastic now, but I think if you're up and coming, and it's a slightly side topic, I guess, but I do think that has created a little bit of a divide, to be perfectly honest. What do you think?
I do think. And with your roles that you recruit for, typically, how a majority of them remote, or do they tend to be hybrid?
Last year, most roles were remote, and this year they're more hybrid. So a day in the office, even if it's like a day every couple of weeks, for the reason that that I guess I stated then. They just want a bit more in-office collaboration, especially if they're in that kind of scale-up phase.
Yeah. I do think I'm a huge fan of remote working. I've done it all my life, but the thing that I see the massive value in the in-office, and I really hope it does continue, especially a day in the office. I think it helps with the bonding of the team and the relationships
Definitely.
between the team, and therefore you're able to. The outcome of that is that you're able to pull more insights from each other as a result of seeing them face to face. And I think that's because when you're in an office with someone, you're more likely to have that that phrase that you've heard for 20 years, which is that like water cooler chat. But you will be having it face to face, and I think it's so important to get to know your co-workers and other levels. It's that trusting. It's been playing on my mind the last few weeks that trust is ultimately what so much boils down to. And I don't think that if someone asks you to come in the office, it's because they don't trust you. It's got nothing to do with that. I think it's about just to really, like as you say, it's a pinnacle of collaboration.
Yeah.
As long as everybody else is in,
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that, and I think there's a bit of brainwashing that's happened in the market to make people think, because there's so many horror stories, right, about companies doing the complete 180 on their remote work policies, and it's either you come in or there are some examples where they just don't trust their staff and they want them back in the office. But also remove yourself and your own views from that equation and think about why that business owner made that decision. Sometimes it's based on performance. The business isn't performing and they want everyone to, it's all hands to the pump, right? It could be the reason there weren't as many redundancies in certain organisations because they doubled down, they got everyone together, and they got through it. But trust, I totally agree, is a massive, massive part of it. I thought of a really good point then.
I just thought as well, like if you think about a CSM, like the whole goal of a CSM is to orchestrate and read a room.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get that from being remote. I've seen really good trainers do it to multiple people online, and they are phenomenal at how they orchestrate a Teams meeting with multiple people.
Yeah.
But to actually be in a room and do it, I think is very different. And so for a CSM to be able to do that and have that prowess, I know CSMs that don't like presenting. They also don't like doing that. And unfortunately, that is a prohibitor. Because you can still articulate value with impact. You can still deliver, what you want to deliver. But what it does do is it impedes your ability to infiltrate a customer and cross collaborate on the customer side, not internally, but on the customer side.
Yeah.
And that can be inhibiting, I think.
Yeah, I'll use an analogy which is very close to my heart. It's more of a question actually, and maybe ponder this. Do you think you would, so let's say you've got a fitness goal which requires the use of a gym. You can build yourself a home gym or you can go and use a commercial gym. Do you think your fitness goals would be accelerated by training at home or going to a gym and absorbing knowledge from others doing what you're trying to do? And I've been training for years, and I would still prefer to go to a commercial gym because I still learn stuff all the time, and it's still great to be surrounded by other people on the same journey, and we're all in kind of different places. Some people want to lose weight, some people want to gain muscle, some people are training for a sport, a marathon, which is like your different departments, but you're all working towards a goal of improvement. And I think if you're not surrounded by like-minded people and you're just in your own space all the time, you're your own echo chamber of thoughts. You've got no collaboration, and yet you can watch podcasts, etc. But it's always on demand. So it's like you can jump on Teams, jump on Slack, but it's just not the same as you hear someone have a really bad call in recruitment, and you just absorb the response, and then you support the response, and then you see the outcome in live time, and I just think that's a really. It's become less of a question and more of a. You can think what you want, but I think being around people is better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good analogy because instantly when you said that, I was thinking, well, if I'm a member of one gym and there are 10 people in that gym, then I can, I can see that there are thousands of gyms across the country and across Europe. If you think about it, like if we look at just science, like to lose body fat, it's calorie deficit,
Yeah.
and energy expenditure. So the principles are always the same, like scientifically, and it's the same in business. The principles are the same. The methods are always different.
Yeah.
So what you see on LinkedIn is a cacophony of tons of gyms where the principles are literally always the same. There's never changed. All the posts look the same.
Yeah.
They always say the same thing on LinkedIn. But that's because the principles are the same, but the methods are different.
Yeah.
And the methods, some work, some don't. Like we all know that if you go on the Atkins diet, well, the reason it works, it's a calorie deficit. If you go on a different diet, the reason it works, it's a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
You can choose any diet you want. Ultimately, that's what it's doing. So it's that principles, and but to be in a arena like the gym where you are influenced by that, it's just you get there quicker, don't you, than you do if you were to stay at home and not have any of that influence.
Yeah, but then and I guess that ties back to what I said originally. If you've reached a point where you've achieved quite a high level in sport and you know exactly what works for you and you want to remain in isolation, you don't want to learn from others, then maybe a home gym isn't the worst option either. And I think that supports experienced individuals maybe not wanting as much cross collaboration, but I do think it's very role dependent, and certainly where you've got interchangeable customers and challenges that are not, they're just constant, they're not the same because you're dealing with humans. It's like recruitment. Something happens where it's never happened before. It's a similar scenario, but it's like, wow, I don't know how to tackle this, let's get together and figure it out. I think that's kind of where I see things like CS and sales, and I think those departments will always have that collaboration. If you're a software developer working on a small part of the software, maybe it's different, but still think there's lessons to be learned there. But
absolutely. The thing that I think is an opportunity and used to make me sad, but now I'm like, actually, it's an opportunity, is that if you go and speak to a sales rep and look at the bubble that they're in, whether it be community, you'll suddenly realise how many silos there are. So we have our CS community, which is amazing. But then there's other communities that are purely dedicated to sales. Why is that? Why is that split? Why are we why have we got continents?
Yeah.
Why have we got continents here? And so, one community that does a good job of this is CS Connect, because they start to bolt together revenue and CS. Big up CS Connect. But it needs to extend further and further and further, because I think that's the way we all learn.
No sponsorships here.
Not yet. Maybe after this.
Do you know what? With my Gainsight mug, I've got a shout out. It's Harry Carroll, isn't it, for Gainsight? He's one of the CSMs there. Really active guy. Goes to lots of events. He's a CSM for an old client of mine as well. Awesome guy. So back on the topic of AI, there was a really great analogy given to me by a chap called Harry Carroll, who works for Gainsight, who you may have heard of before. Fairly substantial CSP. And basically, the question he was asked was just around how he sees the development of AI and CS, and what if people aren't using it, and kind of just his genuine sentiment around it. And this was an event we both went to recently, and we were on the panel. And he just said, look, you need to think about it like this. Without AI, you're Tony Stark, so you're still brilliant, but AI is your suit. And when you combine the Iron Man suit with Tony Stark, you get Iron Man, which is a superhero. And you can do incredible things, right? And he's saying you need to think of AI like that. Like, what's it going to do to make you a superhero and super enhance you in your approach to CS? And I just, because I'm an absolute Marvel nerd as well, I've got some comic books, like graded comic books somewhere in here. I thought it was really good. That's a
great analogy. Yeah, that's a great analogy. And I think before AI came out, I remember seeing a presentation at Pulse where someone had described CS to be like Batman. So they didn't have any superpowers. They just had a belt with some really cool tools.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that analogy. It's just more relatable, isn't it, to think of it like that? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, just
a casual Batman mug there.
I'm ready. Should you have that ready? That was not rehearsed, by the way.
I am a complete nerd, to be honest, when it comes to comic books, etc. I'm coming clean, basically. So anyway, we're close to wrapping up. So I have a question for you, and this can either be from your mouth or what you've heard from others, but take CS as its entirety. So what about customer success can you say right now that would get you cancelled?
I think right now, what would get you cancelled in CS is three things. First of all,
three.
Yeah, I think there's three things that would get you cancelled.
Okay, right,
I think there are three things that would get you cancelled. Number one is, and I think is to roll away from commercials. You've got to stay social, close to commercials.
Yeah.
Which is what we've already spoken about. I think the number two thing that would get you cancelled is, and even if you are in this position, think about getting another job, which is, are you facilitating? Because whilst if you're facilitating, you're not growing, and neither is the company, neither is the customer. So I think that's the second one. And then the third one, if you are on the market right now, whether you are looking for a CSM or you are a CSM looking for someone, I think you're never going to find anything unless you stand out from the crowd.
Yeah.
And to do that, the points we've made already is to make sure that you have the prowess or the ability to apply your knowledge, not just say I've done X, Y, and Z. If you bring a trophy cabinet, they're still not letting you in,
Yeah. No, that's an awesome point, and you'll see that I personally post tons of stuff for candidates and clients when it comes to how to kind of stand out. I post a lot around, vague job descriptions equal vague applicants, vague CVs equal zero responses. So there's lots of really good content out there, but it's just the thing I always kind of boil it down to is almost when it comes to applying for roles, certainly you've got to think about two things when building your profile, and that's what is my impact on the business and what's my impact on customers, and then tie that in with outcomes, so stats, but tell a story. So you can't tell a story without making a point, and the point are your outcomes. And you can't make a point without telling a story. So talk about the types of businesses you've managed and what led to the outcomes that you've achieved. And that's probably how I'd love to wrap this up, James, because otherwise we're going to be, I think we scheduled in half an hour. So how can people find you? So if people want to connect, and I'd love to hear a bit about your consultancy as well.
Yeah, people can find me on LinkedIn, James Lawson, or the website is riverconsultancy.com. They can also find me at Service Genie. They can find me. I'm a really short guy, so they can also find me rustling under some leaves.
Nice.
Somewhere in the West Sussex, looking for bugs. Yeah, yeah, in the West Sussex area. West Sussex is very broad. Don't just go looking for me in West Sussex. Yeah. I don't really see any reason to find me, if I'm being honest. But my consultancy firm, we're very simple. It's a very simple consultancy setup. We basically help tech startups, scale ups, go to market, launch CS, and launch CS in a way that it drives value back into the business. So if you're a tech startup or someone who's just getting going, then reach out to us and we can help. Leadership, mentorship. We have 12 consultants on our books, so we're pretty, pretty fully stocked with staff willing to help.
Awesome. Good stuff. James, it's been an absolute pleasure, buddy. Thanks for being my first.
You're welcome. And thanks a lot for these, maybe. The bug critters.
You can keep them as well.
Thank you.
All right. If I forget you at Christmas, just remember.
They'll still be here.
Yeah. I didn't check that. They might actually be, they might be for animals, like bearded dragons and...
They might be.
Because they're unflavoured, unsalted, aren't they? So.
Yeah. Ironically, look on the back of the packet on the bottom right. It says, "Please don't be a litter bug."
Nice.
I don't think you would need to put that on there, really.
It's quite good marketing, isn't it? It's quite good marketing. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, buddy. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Luke. Cheers, mate.